Well, Dara has special needs, and what those are quite complex, and they don't, like many kids, he has more than one issue, and so his needs are more complex than just saying he's got autism, or he has a communication disorder, or he has behavioral issues, or he has ADHD, and so his needs, I didn't feel living in central London there was any school out there that would be right for him without creating anxiety that would actually create a massive hate for school. Like, I love school. So I think a lot of people forget that people that home educate, we might think, oh, all home educators dislike school themselves, but I loved school. And I know Fatima and I also spoke that she loved school, and maybe for that reason we wanted to take our kids out of school, because the last thing we wanted them from a very early age to have this idea that school is a negative thing and learning is a negative thing. Because at the end of the day, going to school is a place to learn, to be social. I mean, learn on from a very practical, like a math, a reading, but also learn to make friends and be social and have friends. And I just said on all levels that didn't work. And Dara was in a private nursery. He'd gone to do different private nurseries, and then at that point we didn't really feel like we could find a school that he was right for. We just thought developmentally he just needed another year, and so we found a place that would take him to do his nursery year for a third year. And basically that place didn't have a proper SEND provision. He went to all these places with a one-to-one shadow helping him, but they just basically felt he was disruptive and difficult, and basically said, you should go off to this special needs school, which wasn't actually, which we went to look at. It would have been absolutely a disastrous special needs school for my son, because they didn't, first of all, they didn't take kids as young as 3. A lot of special needs school only start at 7. And so what do you do between when you're 4.5 and you need to go to a school between 4.5 and 7, that pre-prep provision in special needs? The only place we found that was a school that had a corridor near King's Cross, and he'd have to go all day. And I knew that to self-regulate, the guy needed sports, he needed to be outside, and the idea that I have to first of all drive my kid at least half an hour each way, and then he'd have to be indoors all day because other kids, they didn't have enough provision or space to be outdoors, just felt like it was going to be glorified babysitting. And actually it was thanks to another mother that I met socially, and she home educated her son, or both her kids. Her son at the time was 13 or 14, and he was touring, being a popular musician too, and she decided to home educate just for the fact that she loved educating and loved teaching herself. And so she, with a bunch of friends, decided to start home educating their kids when she lived back in New England. And her first child, I guess, was little. And so when she moved to England, for years she always did it. And she kind of gave me a few books by the man called Holt, who was kind of the father of home education and unschooling and all of these things. And she sent me 3 books, and I kind of realized, I wasn't the only person that, could consider this, and it wasn't bad. And even though the speech and language therapist at the time said, he needs to be social. But you read all these things about how kids, progressed, that developmentally all these kids progress, and then age 5 or 6, they stop progressing. But they basically have a cliff fall, and they stopped progressing. So that was really important to do early intervention until 5 and 6, and then progress for some kids stood still. And I have a firm belief that actually that the reason certain kids have this stop of progress, because most kids actually continue for, is because they end up putting in a school environment that produces so much anxiety that they slowly fold in on themselves and basically shut off from the world and then stop learning. And I, at the time when we just started home educating, I still wasn't sure if this was the long-term best thing for my son, and I applied for an educational healthcare plan, which is it's basically when your local authority acknowledges that your child has special needs. Generally, this is something that generally is requested by a school. When a school realizes a child has special needs, they then suggest this to them and you go to a local authority. As I was in private schools and then we were home educating, I just decided to start this process on my own. And basically the problem is local authorities do not have enough money to provide the full provision that would be ideal for a child. So generally they suggest things that are below what they should need, and only when you really fail do you get what you want. I mean, every local authority is different. Some are worse than others. But, they suggested that my child gets a 1-to-1 in a mainstream school. But a 1-to-1 in a class. So a mainstream class is 30 kids. And that should be the max in this classroom built. But in every class, there are also 2 special needs kids, plus 2 assistants for those kids. So every classroom that should only have 30 kids and 1 teacher has 4 extra people in those rooms. And for a son whose child has ADHD, who gets distracted by noise, who has issues processing. I mean, today I have a much better understanding what my son has than back then when we started home educating. So, processing, hearing things, attention, focusing, remembering things. I mean, all these things are so challenging that in a classroom where something is said once, then it goes on, the next thing's gone, there's so much anxiety that's created. It's just absolutely impossible. So home education gave us the freedom to build learning around his needs. And as I like learning, I wasn't scared of the fact that I could do it or couldn't do it. I have 2 older kids who all went through school and boarding school and are both at university now. One's studying business and one's an artist, so totally different people. And I knew that, as long as you encourage and I very much feel although what we do might look more like home schooling, it's really about home education. And so much time in a school environment is, of course, spent herding kids to one place, making sure everybody's focused, giving everybody a turn. So reality is when you're at home, you can do that education in 2 hours what another 5-year-old would do over 6 hours.